Welcome, my name is Tishara and this is StarMade. It's been a while, and in the last couple of weeks I have come to the conclusion that I absolutely loathe to put in new systems into existing builds. Did not build for it, so to speak. Interior is in the way, and okay, it can work, but it's not my favorite thing to do. So to relieve me of my boredom, I started a new project. So why are we staring at a trade guild shuttle? Well, that's because this has to do with my new project. Because why not? I've got plenty of unfinished projects, so why start a new one? Oh, whatever. In this case, this is the trade guild shuttle that is probably the subject of the first community contract, or at least a similar build to this. And I thought, okay, I could do something with this. I started experimenting a bit, and when Saber still did the streams, I showed off a couple of pictures of a build I did. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about a different model I created for this challenge, mini challenge. So that's why we come to the next part. It's these blue small models I made. It's basically a sort of throw everything against the wall and see what sticks kind of situation. So I created a lot of small models to see what type of shapes and other configurations of ships I could create. And then I would start building bigger versions of these small modules to see if I can create actual ships from that. And the one I chose for this particular project is this one, because the shape was so different than all the other configurations I had going on. It's a bit more vertical than the other configurations, and it's not reminiscent of the old shuttle at all. So I would have something that would be distinctive from that. As you might expect from me, I assume that you would have thought that I would have shown you a step-by-step of the creation of this ship, but that's not the case, because this is a finished ship. It looks really nice, I think. It's a very distinctive shape, and it's got some very neat features, but this is also not the project I'm talking about. This only leads to the next step in my project. But first, let me show you a couple of things of this smaller version of the ship. Because if you go into build mode for a second, the entrance for this ship, for example, is at the front here. Because the old shuttle had a very awkward ramp, and I wanted something different, so I created this little elevator thing here. So when this ship is landed on the ground or a deck of a ship, larger ship, then you can basically press the button here, the lift comes down, you can come here, then press the button again, and then you go up into the actual cockpit. And there's a bit of a computer stations here in the back, and the core, of course. So there's not much interior here, but then again, it's not a very large ship. Now, the next step in my project is, because I like this smaller ship so much, I wanted to create a bigger version of this ship. Basically a multiple role class type of ship that could house some of these smaller ships. So a fleet support and sort of a bulk carrier kind of mix, I think it's going to be. And of course add some additional weapons. My aim is to create something around the 350 meters in length. So what I did is I took this model and then scaled it up about 11 times. And that's the project I'm starting to work on. The way I went about scaling up this model is basically took every block from our smaller scale model and then created a larger version of this block with a size of 11 by 11 by 11 and started out wireframing the actual ship. Of course, you have to start with the core, And I decided to place the core within the cockpit section of the ship, so I placed it over here, then left enough room for different additions to the bridge to decorate it. So that should keep the core nice and simple out of the way, but still put it in a spot that is recognizable. So this is the way we're going to go about framing out the entire ship until we have a complete replication of this smaller model over there. As you can see here, I progressed a whole lot farther already with the wireframing of this ship. And what I also started to do was these orange lines here in the middle, these are the deck heights. So I wanted to make sure that as much interior space could be used as possible. So I wanted to make sure that every deck would fit within the blocks I would place here, the larger 11 by 11 blocks. So in this case at the top I've got plenty of space, and here at the bottom this line, for example, is the same height as this end of the block, so I probably have to lower it a bit to conceal the flooring of this deck. So that will give me plenty of space to work for systems and for actual interior, of course. And that's mainly the problem I had with the existing builds that I was refitting for new systems. Because I didn't do this in the beginning, I couldn't really take into account where system needed to be placed. For example, you want your shields as most of it in the middle as possible, so it would the sphere would encompass as much blocks as possible. But if there's interior in the way, you can't place it there, so that's a bit of a problem. Well, this wireframe is basically the full length of the ships as it's going to be, as a full size. So, like I said, this is a 11 times bigger ship than the smaller one. As you can see, it's a very big difference. So it should have plenty of space to dock the smaller ship inside them. And not only that ship, but probably the original shuttle as well to be able to dock there. So any shuttle class type of ship I want to be able to handle. And my thought was to create a entrance to a docking area over here with the blue rectangle over here. So you could fly in here and then go somewhere to dock. Not sure how exactly, but in this early stage it's a good idea to already start planning, or at least thinking about where you want certain entrances to your ship to be, because those areas will be the most important connecting to the outside and take up the most space. I don't really need to do everything in the wireframe, I just need to do enough to know where certain parts of the ship are going to be, and the rest I can just fill in and detail as I go along. I already started doing that with the front over here, so the cockpit itself is already basically done. And I quite like the look of this larger ship with a cockpit like this. So this will play into the trade guilds the way they are. As far as I understand it, they generally have the cockpit at the front of the ship. So that would also be the case in larger ships. And trying to keep this build as much trade guild as possible. So perhaps I'll submit it as a trade guild ship if that's possible, but we'll see what happens in the future. There's still no official words about the contract at the moment of this video. I already started detailing it as well, just because I wanted to have a basic understanding of what I wanted to do with this build. Added some detailing, for example, over here that is not mirrored on the other side, will bring a bit more life to larger areas like this. I also added basic systems just to protect my my build a bit more, and give it some maneuverability if I get bumped by one of the trade ships. And I was thinking about shields. Like I said earlier, it's very annoying to have shields in the middle of your ship because that's the most logical place to build them. But now that we don't have integrity anymore, we can do things like this. So connect one shield generator to the next one over there, and then the middle point will be here because it will see both connected shield generators as one unit. So if we go to the shield bubble itself, you have to go into build mode. As you can see here, it's perfectly centered in the ship, and I don't have to sacrifice the central space for these systems instead of interior. So this works out nicely. I'm still debating what I'm going to do with shields in general, because I'm not sure if there's any upside to having multiple shields, because you can only make shield bubbles as big as until they envelop the next shield generator, and then they don't work anymore, then they conflict. And per shield generated bubble, you only have a maximum amount of shield capacity before it starts to decrease in shield health. So creating one shield generator and one big shield will probably net you more shield health, I think. Not sure, I have to experiment a bit with that, but I've got plenty of time to do that. I'm not planning to do anything with the interior that much in the beginning, just finishing the exterior shell first. And then we should have plenty of space inside to figure things out. As I'm starting to flesh out the outer shell a bit more and more, I'm starting to add the overall detailing as well. And what I basically did is I basically built a larger version of the textures I used to detail the smaller model. For example, I used engines over here in my smaller model, but I built actual engine pods here in blocks. Then added a pipe instead of the single brown hull in the middle. And the same with this over here, piping and some doodads and lights in the side over here. For example, that detail here is a reversed, I believe it was a rail block I used in the original smaller one. Some more detailing over here. And then I thought, okay, this space below the main cockpit section is a very good spot to add a big turret. So I started adding a rotating spot for the base of the turret, then try to figure out how long this turret base or turret barrel could be, see if it would stick out too much or not. So that's just temporary, but this will also interfere with the initial plan to have an entrance here for my shuttles. So I think I'm going to move it to be able to enter the ship from below. So the entrance will be here. You will go up into the ship over here and then have a docking bay in this area. And this will also allow a lot more space for our docking area. Instead of the space that will be lower here, then I can only go perhaps to here and not that far to the front, I think. So I think that works out a bit better. Well, some more shelling going on, but in this case I also had thought about, okay, we've got an entrance more or less thought out for our shuttles, where they're going to enter the ship itself, but should there be a normal USD dock as well? In a ship this size, it doesn't really make sense, but you could have one with a station, for example, with an extended docking tube or something like that that could connect to a larger ship like this. But then the question is, where am I going to place this? There's not a lot of room on the hull itself, I think, where it would fit and where it wouldn't look strange. But then I noticed that this particular detail over here at the front, this panel, would be a nice place to build it, because it would line up with the same level as the cockpit at the front. So I just did that, and if you press the button over here, this will slide to the side and then reveal the USD dock that doesn't have any rails yet, but we'll do that in the future. So it's nice and covered up if you don't need it, and if you do need it, you can slide the panel to the side, and then you have an entrance to your ship the normal USD dock way. And there's nothing inside there yet, of course. The nice part about building this way, because I already have the smaller ship as an example, is when you already know where everything is going to be, when the inspiration has given you some ideas for detailing, for example, like I did here with the frame around this particular detail area, then you can just add it and it will be fine, because it's not going to move from this spot, not really. The same with this area, for example. These lighter gray blocks are on the smaller ship, just 3 blocks that form these wedge-like shapes here in the back. But they would look a bit odd if you would just translate it one-on-one to the bigger ship, because it's so big and you can add more detail. And that is just what I did. I subtracted some areas, added some paneling and some more doodads on top of it, and in the back I added, not sure what they are, but they look technical and they do something, probably heat management, I don't know. It should look functional, but it's up to the interpretation of the player to let me know what it is. But what I did do, and I'm not sure if you can see it correctly here, let me light up the place a bit. Yeah, that's better. I did fill these blocks with these circuit boards, and I do this because I know I'm not going to use the structures for any systems or whatever, because systems are a lot less space intensive than they were before. And if they get shot, then you can see at least some circuitry that's in there that gets exposed. So it's more of a contingency. If the ship gets damaged, then you can see something. I already started adding more detail here and there. For example, these antennas I'm pretty much done with as far as detailing goes, because they don't take all that much effort to do. And I also changed my mind about these dark gray areas here. I had them a lot thicker in the previous versions of the ship, but I thinned them out a bit, and then I continued the same thickness over here all the way down. So that worked out a bit better, I think, than the previous thicker version I had. And also started adding framing where I could, for example here in this dark gray area, to emphasize a bit more detail in what are pretty bland areas of the ship at the moment. For example, these gray areas over here are pretty plain armor plates that don't have a lot of detail, in contrast to this area near the wing, where there's a lot more detail and a lot more detail going on. At this point in the build, you can already see the obvious similarities to the smaller build that I did, but there's some additional changes I need to face that requires to redesign certain elements. For example, the engine at the back. In the case of my smaller counterpart, it's just a plate of ice with some lights behind it, but in the case of the bigger ship, then I want additional engines. So I come up with this design, a bigger engine in the middle, and then a whole bunch of smaller engines around it to give it the needed thrust to move this ship. At least have the illusion that it has enough thrust to move the ship. That should work out, I think. But I still need to finish off the wing bit over here, and then this area below it. It's still not filled in. But as far as the size goes of the ship, this is pretty much it. It just requires a whole bunch of more detailing and other things to finish off the exterior. And then, of course, still a whole lot more work for the interior as well. I more or less finished up the engine design. This is the way I'm going to keep it for now. Just need to add some additional piping to the connecting to the engines themselves, I think. But that's about it for this section. I also started adding the plating for the wing bits. So then we have the complete profile of our ship as well for the top and side views. So it's really a bigger version of our smaller ship now. And this is where I'm going to keep it for this episode, I think. Like I said, I still have a lot of work to do, finish up the hull, finish up the detailing, but I think I'm going to show you that in the next episode. And if you have any thoughts about big trade guild ships, let me know as well. What are they used for? How would they have their loadout as far as weapons or cargo displayed? Give me your thoughts. I think I can use some input, especially for the interior, what a trade guild ship like this would need. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know, and I'll see you next time.